Of all of the stories in the Torah, the story of Cain and Abel is one of the best known, and yet I would argue most significantly underanalyzed stories in the Torah. You think about it, when was the last time that you heard someone give a sermon on Parshat Breshit about Cain and Abel, or studied it in a public space? Maybe it's because Breshit is so fertile with beautiful and uplifting stories. The violence of this story rarely gets the time that it deserves among rabbinic drashot and teachings. The story of sibling rivalry and jealousy is one of our foundational stories of humanity as a whole. And yet it's also specifically a story about male violence and the absence of love and dignity between men. Reading it today, it's obvious that its themes of male anger, violence, and competition are no less relevant. The story of Cain and Abel represents a first story on men and masculinity, the newness of gendered humanity reflected in the emotional immaturity of Cain. It's Cain's silence, his lack of ability to express himself emotionally, which stands out so prominently in this story. When he offers his sacrifice, no words are exchanged. When God questions him on his sadness and shame, he gives no answer. It's not until God questions Cain on his brother's whereabouts that he's able to express himself at all. And even then, it's with in a deflection of responsibility in the question, am I my brother's keeper? Cain's silence is most jarring, though, in verse 8, where the pasuk begins, and Cain said to his brother Abel, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Well, what did he say? What did he say in the moment? We have no answer in the Torah, but the rabbis come up with their own answers. Reshit Rabbah, for instance, brings a machloket, an argument here between three rabbis over what Cain and Abel were fighting about. One says they were fighting over possessions. Another claims they were fighting over holy sites. And the third claims they were fighting over who would get to marry the only other woman alive at that time. These positions are interesting in of themselves, but it's also important to note that they don't question or challenge the masculinity portrayed here. They note it and try to provide a reason for the fatal argument based upon their experiences of why men fight at all, mapping them onto this story in the Torah's silence. Rashi, though, brings a more psychological perspective. Instead of filling in the content of the conversation, he offers a guess at Cain's intention behind the conversation, saying, Nichnas imo b'divrei riv, that Cain enters into a fight with Abel in order to blame him and then kill him. For Rashi, the content is not important. After all, if it was important, the Torah would have said what was actually said there. But rather, the silence suggests that the motivation behind it is really what's key. But what if the silence here was just that? What if it was actually silence? You can almost picture Cain, after days of sulking and self-pity, with anger and resentment rising, confronting Abel, opening his mouth to speak, and only fury coming out, unable to express his emotions except through the physicality of violence which claims his brother's life. What if his silence was an inability to cope with his emotions in a healthier way? What if his silence was an inability to reach out and ask for help when he needed it? How does God respond in this moment? By trying to encourage self-reflection in Cain. When God asks, "Where's your brother Abel?" Rashi teaches, "Lehikanes imo b'divrei nachat," that the Holy One tried to enter into friendly conversation with him in the hopes that he'll reflect and say, "I killed him, and I'm sorry." Cain does finally speak here, but it's absent the reflection that God was hoping to prompt. And even if he had shown growth and remorse in this moment, it's unfortunately too little, too late for Abel. If this was the only story the Torah told of masculinity, we might think that the Torah believes that this is the way of the world, an unavoidable part of masculinity that maybe can be channeled into something positive or holy, but is essentially inseparable from the violent struggle for power that we see so often in the Torah and in our world. However, that's not all that we find. This story is just the beginning of an arc that spans the entire book of Breshit and resolves itself in Shemot. Through generation after generation of sibling rivalry, through Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, Joseph and his brothers, we see slow but steady growth in those relationships. But it's not until Moses and Aaron that we're finally presented with a new model for masculinity. Moses, like Cain, is another figure who struggles with speech. When he receives his call at the burning bush, Moses is reluctant, saying, "Please, O Lord, I have never been a man of words. Either in times past or now that you have spoken to your servant, I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. Please, O Lord, make someone else your agent." God angrily responds out of the bush, "I know that your brother Aaron the Levite speaks readily. Even now he's setting out to meet you, and he'll be happy to see you. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth. I will be with you and with him as you speak, and tell both of you what to do. And he shall speak for you to the people. Thus he shall serve as your spokesman, with you playing the role of God to him." On the surface, we see a reluctant Moses revealing what seems to be a disability to God, with God listening, albeit perhaps impatiently, and providing a solution. But maybe there's something else going on for Moses. Rashi, like during Cain's silence before killing his brother, looks at Moses' motivation for turning down the leadership role, saying all of Moses' reluctance was because he didn't want to take any dignity that would make him superior to his brother, who is both older than he was and also a prophet. God responds not by dismissing Moses' emotion, as God does with Cain earlier in the story, but by acknowledging it here, saying, "Your brother won't be angry like you think he'll be. In fact, he's on his way here, and he's sameach b'libo. He's happy in his heart, both that you've been offered this position and to act as your voice." We see in this arc the development of masculinity and of what it means to be men, from two brothers who literally can't talk to each other to two brothers, one of whom acts as the authentic voice of the other, helping him to find language that he himself can't articulate. It's these two brothers who merit to receive the Torah and lead the people from slavery into freedom. Moses and Aaron then are the foil to Cain and Abel, men helping other men to find the voice of their emotional selves. Without knowing it, this is what Stephen Philp and I were doing when we started Shomer Achi a year and a half ago, as a space here at JTS for male-identifying rabbinical and cantorial students to talk about how gender impacts their lives and their role as leaders of various communities, as well as how to be better allies for others in the communities that we'll serve. The group began in the wake of yet another school shooting after reading article after article that talked about toxic masculinity in our society and how it can lead to violence. But in all of these think pieces, I didn't find anything that offered suggestions on how to build a community that created and modeled healthy masculinities. And so Shomer Achi was born as an experiment in creating these sorts of communities. While I had no idea where the group would lead, I can say now that it's been a transformative space for me, helping me to develop deep emotional relationships with other men by breaking down the barriers of competition and emotional isolation that I think we too often carry around as a protective barrier from being vulnerable and from the pain that sometimes accompanies that vulnerability. I found it to be a space where we can both support and challenge one another, helping each other to refine and give language to that which is often not spoken about. It's in this way that we continue today to live out the aspirational arc of the Torah that began with strife in Cain and Abel, and that moves towards the brotherly support of Moses and Aaron. In this way, we answer Cain's question the way that he should have so long ago. Shomer Achi Anochi, I am my brother's keeper. We'll continue with Kaddish de Rabbanan on page 13. I'll invite those who are mourning or observing Yahrzeit to join me. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divra kirutei ve'amlich malchutei, B'chayachon uvyomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'me'al maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'alev v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Al Yisrael v'al Rabbanan v'al Tamidehon, v'al kol Tamidehon, v'al kol man doskin be'oraita, di v'atra hadein v'di v'chol atar v'atar, Yehei lahon ulchon shlama rabba, china v'chista v'rachamin, v'chayin arichin umuzana revicha, ufrukana min kodam avuhon divishmaya v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim tovim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu b'rachamav yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Let's hope the Vikings replicate what you did.
I want to thank you all for being here. It means so much to me to be surrounded by so many friends and colleagues and teachers, particularly because all of you have been with me on this journey. Some of you from a couple of blocks away, some of you from across the river, and as far away as coming in from Houston. I would just want to thank you all for taking the time today, especially to Rabbi Urbach for being a mentor for me, not only for this, but throughout my entire time here at JTS. You have a way of listening to people deeply and helping to elevate their ideas and thoughts in a way that I admire deeply and aspire to. And I finally just want to thank my parents for being here and supporting me throughout rabbinical school. And through their generosity that we have some treats and the chayims outside. So I'll invite you into that area. I believe there's choir after this, so we can start making our way into that space. And Shabbat Shalom, everyone.